In the beginning of the previous conversation about Lalita Sahasranama, you started with saying 4 dimensions, right? While speaking about that dimension, you spoke about the 2D aspect of it, which is the Sri Yantra. So many people have a lot of questions on this Sri Yantra. So the 3D aspect of it is the Meru, right? Which is the 3D image or 3D, I would say, I mean, lack of a better word, 3D model of the Sri Yantra itself, right? So let's talk about the 2-dimensional part. The mantra aspect, I think you have spoken about it in our previous episode, very previous episode, what's a mantra. So the audience can go check that. But let's talk about more on the Sri Yantra. What is Sri Yantra? The mic is yours.
First of all, what is a yantra?
Yeah.
In Tantra, there are 2 or 3 methods that we use to access divine consciousness. So one is a mantra, one is a yantra, and the third we can say mudra also. Right? Now, a mantra, like you said, we have spoken about. A yantra is a diagrammatic representation. And the Sri Yantra specifically, it is called the Raja Yantra.
Okay.
It is said that Shiva gave out 64 yantras.
Wow.
Out of which he gave the knowledge of the Sri Chakra Yantra to Parvati and said, this is very precious.
Okay.
Because from this, every other yantra can be extrapolated.
Okay.
Or extracted. So this became the Raja Yantra.
Okay.
And what is the Sri Yantra? It is also called the Sri Chakra Yantra.
Okay.
We were speaking about the Mahameru. When you flatten out the Mahameru, what you get on a 2-dimension is the Sri Chakra Yantra. What is it made up of? See, first of all, let us understand one thing. Words and language are very limited forms of communication.
Yeah.
Right? They have their limitations in that very intense philosophical thoughts cannot really be communicated. Experience, yes, can be communicated, but intense philosophy cannot be communicated using words. That's why across the globe, across every civilization, we've had sacred symbols. The Sri Yantra is one of the most powerful, potent sacred symbols existing on this planet.
Okay.
And the origins of it are really not known. Right? It's like it came to us from the rishis who saw it in a moment when they accessed their alternate consciousness.
Okay.
Right? It's almost like having an ayahuasca experience where your consciousness does not remain the same after an experience. It's like that. So the Sri Yantra is, it consists of dot, circle, triangle, and lines. That's it. And ultimately, that's what sacred geometry can consist of. There is nothing more to the universe itself. It's only these few, geometrical things that exist.
Yeah.
Now, the Sri Chakra Yantra is 43 triangles. And there are various reasons why, it's 43 triangles, also has a connection to the flower of life, the tree of life, to the Egyptian pyramids. The mathematics are the same.
Okay.
The Sri Yantra adheres very, very closely to the golden ratio.
Okay.
The Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
So now scholars are saying that the name which is given, Fibonacci sequence, it actually comes from the Sri Yantra. This knowledge went from east to Italy, where they named it, they did the pi and the ratio and all of that.
Patented it in his name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the knowledge
1, 2,
comes from
3, 5, 7.
Right.
Those are the numbers.
That's
right?
correct.
Yeah.
Which you see in nature. Like you see how the petals are formed, or how even the cactus grows, or how even the human embryo grows.
Yeah.
So all of that can be related to the Sri Yantra.
That's the ratio of 1.6318 That's the
That's correct.
That's the number, right?
Right. If you look at the golden ratio
Yeah.
diagram, then
Yeah.
you can see that very clearly.
Yeah.
And they say that even faces.
Yeah. The
if
human body is basically designed out
also,
of.
when you're attracted to a certain face,
Yeah.
it's because it is closer to the golden ratio than other faces.
Yeah.
The symmetry is such that, it adheres to a certain, the Fibonacci sequence,
Right.
perhaps.
As a designer, we learn the golden ratio a lot, and then you see the architectural buildings that get built. They look beautiful because of a certain proportion, and they all fall under the golden ratio.
Right.
Of course, it all is inspired by nature. The number of leaves in a plant adheres to the spiral that the sunflower petals or the sunflower, the dots that are there,
The spores, I think
the
they're
spores,
called.
right? The numbers
Right.
falls under the Fibonacci series.
Right.
So the same thing, that is what the artists and the architects took, and let's say especially in Rome, right? The Renaissance time,
Yes.
when the structures became, and why Rome is beautiful is because of a certain proportion.
So the Sri Yantra, it is said that it has a direct link with the geometry of the pyramids. So there is a gentleman from Andhra, a scientist, who has actually visited the pyramids, and he has found that the triangles within the Sri Yantra have exact same angles as the pyramid. And he says the pyramids are not what people think of as a burial of the dead. They're actually places of bioenergy. So then he connects it with the Sri Yantra. And he says there was an interchange of knowledge, exchange of knowledge between the Egyptians and people who were aware of the Sri Yantra.
Nice.
And also, I think it's important to know that a lot of study has been done into Sri Yantra as how energetic it is.
Yeah.
There is one study which they have done, which shows that it helps seeds germinate better. And this gentleman has proven that seeds germinate 2.2 times longer.
Wow.
And there's also one more study which was done. I think everyone can Google this. This was more of an experimental setup where just drawing the Sri Yantra on the ground changes the nature of the soil itself.
Wow.
Yeah, so it makes it more fertile. And there is, people talk about this one Sri Yantra which appeared in the desert of Oregon in the USA.
Okay.
And the Sri Yantra is not easy to draw.
Yeah.
Even today with computer support, it's still hard to draw.
Yeah.
And this appeared in a large scale format, and people were unable to figure out how any human could have done this.
Yeah.
And later, this entire desert, they say, that part where the Sri Yantra appeared actually became very green and became like a little oasis in the middle of the desert.
Wow. When was this?
Very recent, I think in the 80s or the 90s.
Okay.
And I think from then we've seen the resurgence of interest in the Sri Yantra. Because if you observe, it's only in the past couple of years that we've seen people wearing the Sri Yantra and it becoming more commercial. Before that, I was not even aware of this sacred geometry, which is several thousand years old.
Yeah.
And then when I first wrote the book, a lot of feedback came to me from people who wrote in saying that it was leading them, it's like a portal to another consciousness. It was like they were going under anesthesia, and the last thing they remember is seeing this geometry. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And later when they saw this, they were like, okay, this is what I saw when I was just going into an unconscious state, or when they were coming back into consciousness. People with near-death experiences claim that it was the Sri Yantra that they saw. And it is said that the Sri Yantra activates the pineal gland. Just merely looking at the Sri Yantra, it does two things. One is activation of the pineal gland. Second thing is more of an alignment of the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
And the left hemisphere is, see, what happens when there is greater alignment is that there is greater creativity, there is more intuition, all of that coming to the fore. So where there is an integration of knowledge and intuition, and that is what we all want.
Yeah.
And that is what this brings about. That's why there is so much of, that is why I keep saying, just meditate on the Sri Yantra, even if it's for 3 minutes or 4 minutes, meditate on it. Every day, just look at it. Because there is something happening with the neuroplasticity of the brain. And this is true with all sacred symbols. See, because with symbols, that's the thing. What words cannot describe, symbols bring to the mind very easily. So that's why even the power of all of the brands that we talk of today, you know, the Nike swoosh or even Pepsi, you don't even need words.
Yeah.
It brings something to your mind naturally. That then words become redundant. So that is the beauty of the Sri Yantra. But now coming to how to approach the Sri Yantra in the process of meditation. You have to think of it as a spiritual journey, like a Tirth Yatra.
Okay.
So 2 ways of doing it. One is to approach it from, okay, let us first understand the little geometry behind it.
Yeah.
It starts with the square, which is almost like the girdle. It's like the fort. You start with what is called the Bhupura. So the Bhupura is effectively all about space. It's enclosing space. And as you know, time and space are both actually, you know, we have tried to confine it within the human construct. Otherwise, it's so vast, it's difficult for any one of us to grasp the real meaning of either time or space. So the Bhupura does just that. It draws the line so that we can then confine everything within it.
Yeah.
So the Bhupura is shown with 3 lines. And then you move into 3 concentric circles within the Bhupura. Okay, so those 2 form the first avarna. So now before that, I think, you know, this is going little back and forth. Just bear with me because this is such a vast subject that sometimes it becomes necessary to deviate a little bit. The Sri Yantra has 9 avarnas. Avarana meaning veil.
Okay.
Okay, like these are the veils. This is Maya, which keeps us from reaching the divine consciousness or from understanding what the divine intelligence is all about. So we have to traverse through these 9 avarnas from the Bhupura, where eventually we find enlightenment at the Bindu.
Okay, so 9 layers of reaching there, or 9 doors, you can say.
Portals.
Yeah.
Or veils which get lifted.
Yeah.
As you go on the spiritual path, as you go on this Tirth Yatra, starting from the Bhupura towards the Bindu, think of it as a journey. You know, it's like going to Kedarnath or going to Manas Sarovar. It's the same way. You have to approach it as a spiritual yatra. So then you have the 3 concentric circles, which can stand for past, present and future. Why are they concentric? Because it's infinite. We don't know where it starts. We don't know where time starts. We don't know where time ends. So first you have space, which is shown by the square. And then you have time, which is shown as circles. If you understand this much, you will see how scientific this drawing is. Because you couldn't have had time outside and space within it. So our rishis, when they saw this, they had such immense clarity that they knew that space had to be confined just for our understanding, and then within the realm of space, time happens. And then there is the division of time into past, present and future. From there, we come into the 16 petals. The lotus.
Lotus.
Again, the lotus, it has various connotations in Sanatana, but mainly one of the fact that as the lotus expands, so does consciousness. So the 16 petals. The 16 petals have a certain meaning. 5 are your karmendriyas. 5 petals point out to the 5 karmendriyas. 5 talk about the jnanendriyas, which are our, the senses, the 5 senses. Then there are the 5 elements, the pancha mahabhutas. And then there is the mind.
Okay.
So then you have the 16
16
petals. So you have to traverse through all of these. You have to go through all these experiences using your senses. So the pleasures, all of that, you have to traverse that veil, that avarana, to reach inside into the 8 petals. Now the 8 petals, what are they all about? It can be, there are various meanings. It can be, the 8 Vagdevis that we were talking about, who, gave rise to speech, to mantras. So different scholars ascribe different meanings. And each of these avarnas also has, we will come to that later, the role that they play. That's highly technical in nature, but I'm just skimming the surface here. And then from the 8 petals, you move into the first, set of triangles, which is 14 outward pointing triangles, which then is your 4th avarna.
Okay.
And then you move into one set of 10 triangles. Then another set of 10 triangles. So these are each of the avarnas which you are traversing. And each one has a deeper meaning. So like when you're talking about the 10 outward triangles, these are all the 10 pranas, the vital forces. There are 10 types of pranas, right?
Yeah, we can
so
say
we
that
have to traverse that as well. And then you go into, when you finally go into the Kamakala, which is just the single triangle with 3 corners. Okay.
Downward facing triangle.
Downward facing triangle.
Yeah.
And then the final avarna you reach is the bindu. That's the number 1.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what we arrive at, where Shiva and Shakti come together. And creation happens.
That's the point.
That's the one point where Srishti happens. So you've traversed all this way, all the veils have lifted along the way. You can almost imagine, it's like a door opening each time. And then you reach the bindu. So now this is the path of the Sri Vidya Sadhaka, who uses the Sri Yantra as a way to bring Devi in to his zone of consciousness, and then at the bindu she becomes one with your breath.
Nice.
So for this you can either use a mantra or you can combine it with the yantra for double efficacy, as it were.
Right, yeah.
So now we've traversed the 9 avarnas and come into the bindu, where you are at the cusp of enlightenment. Now, it's like almost Jivan Mukta, in the sense that there is a dispassion, that you have developed Vairagya, you have overcome all these things, it's like Sarva Sankshobana, all the agitation which comes with wanting, with desires, all of that is gone. And then all, Sarvasa Paripuraka, which means all your ashas, all your desires have been fulfilled. So with desires also comes, the agitation. So you traverse it one by one.
Okay.
And then you come to one chakra, which is only for trying to get rid of all the illnesses. It's called Sarva Roga Hara Chakra. So we can go through all these names. So that the first one is called the Trailokya Mohana.
Okay.
The second one is the Sarvasha Paripuraka.
Okay.
So the Bhupura is the Trailokya Mohana. Then the second, where we talk of the 16 petals, that is the Sarva Asha Paripuraka.
Okay.
Then you come to the 8 petals, which is the Sarva Sankshobana, which is at which point all the agitation is taking place. And then you come into the Sarva Saubhagya Dayaka, which means all the goodness, all the abundance comes to you. Then you come to the Sarvartha Sadhaka. Then you move into the Sarva Rakshakara, which means there is protection all around for everything, for all sentient beings. And then you come to the Sarva Rogahara. And then after that you come to the Sarva Siddhiprada. Okay, this is the inward, downward facing single triangle. And then the last one is the Sarvanandamaya. This is the Bindu.
The bliss.
Yes. At the Bindu is where you will find the bliss, where there is a union of Shiva and Shakti. So this is what the Sri Yantra is all about.
Wow. Namaste. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. There's more to come. I just wanted to step in and give you this very useful and valuable information about a brilliant app called as Sadhana app, which is brought to us by the Vedic Sadhana Foundation, conceived by Sri Guru Om Swamiji. What do we seek in life? Love, material wealth, spiritual progress, knowledge, wisdom, or better health? With the Sadhana app, you can turn inward and reap the benefits and achieve whatever you want using Vedic wisdom. Om Swamiji has made the chants and the Vedic wisdom available to all of us. The mantras are awakened. Anyone can learn. Practically anyone can learn and perform more than 150 Vedic rituals through this app. The team that has worked on the Sadhana app has done a brilliant job in terms of the design, the aesthetics, the background score. It is designed like a game, keeping in mind the contemporary young audience. I myself have done the Navadurga Sadhana recently, and I am currently doing the Shiva Dashakshara 21-day Sadhana. I can tell you this, if I don't do my Sadhana one day, I feel incomplete. The sadhanas that are done through the app, it makes me feel grounded, it gives me confidence, makes me feel rooted. The reason that I started Prana Stories and started talking to various experts was to gain this ancient wisdom, and this Sadhana app helps me do just that. Isn't that incredible? So what are you waiting for? Go download the Sadhana app, experience the app itself, and see what is in store for you and reap the benefits out of it. Kyunki sadhana se sambhav hai. Continue watching the podcast. And if you are new here, please like, comment, share. Thank you for supporting so far. Namaste. Yeah, it's covered almost everything. Okay, now let me ask a question. People do meditate on the Sri Yantra, right?
Yes.
There are so many rituals that happen on the Sri Yantra. Now, when somebody is meditating, there are various methods of doing this. As a general sort of a suggestion or a recommendation that you do, how do you meditate on a Sri Yantra? Do you use a mantra, or do you just say Om, or what mantra do you use? Do you have anything on that?
One way of doing it is purely just looking at the Sri Yantra.
Just looking.
And focusing upon the 9 avarnas and moving from an outward to an inward direction. I would not recommend that you move inward to outward because as we were discussing earlier, there is one path for renunciates and there is one path for grihasthas.
Okay.
So there is Srishti Krama and Samhara Krama.
You'll have to break it down a little more here.
Okay. So when we start at the Bhupura, right, the movement, the spiritual path is taking us deeper and deeper to and brings us to the cusp.
Correct.
Whereas if we have to move from the Bindu to the Bhupura, that's far more complex.
Okay.
And far more difficult in the way in which you will have more obstacles in your path.
Okay.
Right? So that could be for a renunciate. That could be if you have already taken up sannyasa, and then you can do that kind of meditation. But for a grihastha, it helps to start with the Bhupura as the first avarna and then move towards the Bindu.
Okay, so I have a little confusion here. So you're saying for the grihastha, you go from the square to the Bindu.
Correct.
Right. So for the grihastha to be on a spiritual path, that makes perfect sense. But for a renunciate, the renunciate also has to go towards that path, right? I mean, why would a renunciate come from, because he is already there, probably, and then when you say Bhupura, it's the worldly thing, right?
Correct.
Why does the renunciate want to come from there to the worldly thing?
See, this is the story of the nivritti and pravritti paths.
Okay.
Right? So we are talking very in a very like a pragmatic fashion. But if you look at it from a slightly more esoteric angle, renunciant doesn't really need to go through a lot of the things which a grihastha has to go through.
Yeah.
But he has his own battles. And it is said in Kali Yuga, the renunciant's path is far more difficult.
Okay.
Because there are so many challenges and there are so many desires which he also feels.
Okay.
But overtly, he is not able to express. Covertly, what he feels, we don't know. So that, they say, is a path which only they can take.
Okay.
And they only know their own challenges, which we are not able to understand.
Okay.
But in Tantra, it is mentioned explicitly that for a grihastha, we have to move from the bhupura to the bindu.
Okay. Okay. So
Also, when we are talking of nivritti and pravritti, energy can move in two ways. Okay, so it can be an outward and downward movement. So if you look at everything that we do, you know, whether it's eating or any pleasurable activity, it's outward and downward. It's coming from outside and it's moving downward. The energy. Whereas any activity which is spiritual in nature is inward and upward.
right.
So inward and upward is the movement of the chakras. The kundalini energy can only move upward. And it's only in spirituality that you see this upward movement.
Okay.
So that's also something that we have to talk about, because this is an inward and upward movement that we are focusing on
Okay.
when we are talking of the Sri Vidya,
Okay.
of the Sri Yantra.
Sri Chakra.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So while we spoke about how to meditate on that, like we have to go from the outward to the inward.
Right.
We also need to talk about what mantra to use while meditating.
Ideally, if you can just meditate on the Sri Yantra with the Bala Tripura Sundari mantra,
Okay.
because it's a very simple mantra, still very potent and powerful, and just 3 bijaksharas. Aim, Kleem, Sau.
Okay.
So even as you traverse each avarna, if you can say Aim, Kleem, Sau, that gives you greater focus and clarity.
Okay.
So you can do that, or you can use the Lalita Sahasranama, or better still, you can use the Devi Khadgamala, because the Khadgamala also gives you the positions of all the yoginis.
Okay.
But that's a more expert practice. That is for people, you know, who've already studied the yantra. They know the placement of the different matrikas, of the devis, of the yoginis. Then the Khadgamala is also very useful.
Okay.
So the different ways of doing it.
So you can use Lalita Sahasranama also to
Or the Trishati.
Trishati. I mean, I heard that Lalita Trishati needs an initiation from a guru.
Lalita Trishati needs an initiation because it holds the Shodashi mantra. It's hidden in it.
Yeah, right.
So that does need an initiation from a guru.
But apart from that, let's say if people are not using the Trishati, using Lalita Sahasranama or the Bala Mantra that you mentioned,
Or the Khadgamala.
People can do it without initiation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they can focus on each of the avarnas and let's say, I mean, again, like in the Lalita Sahasranama segment that we spoke, you can say we can extract one part of it and also meditate, right?
Yes.
The same thing can be done using the Sri Yantra.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So let's say, for example, somebody is going through a physical ailment.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned which is the avarna for some...
Sarva Rogahara.
Sarva Rogahara.
Yeah.
So if
That
I
is
focus
the 7th
on...
avarna.
Yeah. If I focus on the 7th avarna and also extract that part of Lalita Sahasranama on that, is it more potent?
Extremely potent.
Okay.
So for example, anyone who has any ailment, focus on the 7th avarna And then specifically if you have an issue with, say, infertility, because now today it's a very common problem, infertility. So then there are some lines in the Lalita Sahasranama which talk about motherhood and all of that. Extrapolate those lines and use that as your focal point of meditation on the seventh avarna. Or if you're only looking at material prosperity, then you can use any one of the, either the Sarva Asha Paripuraka or the, Sarva Sarvartha Sadhaka, whichever one you think appeals most to you. And whatever it is at that point of life is important for you, you can use that.
Okay. So, what we are saying is all you need is you should know the mantra.
Yes.
And you need a Sri Chakra Yantra, two-dimensional, which is rightly drawn. You can get it in the market, which is in the right way.
There,
drawn.
I would advise that you exercise a little bit of caution.
Yeah.
Because the geometry has to be perfect.
Yeah.
I've seen many even online which are little unusual geometry. The problem is if you get even one aspect of the geometry wrong, then the energy that you're inviting might not be the most auspicious.
Okay.
So, this is not to plug, but just to give an idea of what I am trying to do to close this gap. There is one company called Shunya Wellness. I'm mentoring the person who is running this company.
Okay.
He's a boy who studied design abroad and then felt the urge to come and do something with spirituality in India.
Nice.
So some of the things that he's done with the Sri Yantra and with the chakras in general are very accurate. They have been endorsed even by the most staunch Sri Vidya sadhakas in South India.
Nice.
So if people want to really invest and, if they're ready to spend, then Shunya Wellness is a website which they should check out.
Okay.
Because I can vouch for the authenticity of the stuff they have there.
Nice.
Rather than to spend that same money somewhere else.
Yeah.
At least get authentic stuff.
Right. So I was coming to that you have the right kind of Sri Yantra.
Yes.
And also have the right pronunciation of the mantras, and do it the right number of times at the right time. This is how you should, and you don't need anything else like a puja, the Shodashopachara or something like that, or you just use the yantra and meditate on it using the mantra. Or
see, you can do the upachara also. As a part of the ritual. It is not necessary part of Sri Vidya.
Okay.
Because Sri Vidya is an entirely internal practice.
Okay. So you don't even need to say it out loud?
Not necessarily.
Not necessary. Okay.
That is where the difference between a japa and the stotra comes. While Lalita Sahasranama and Trishati are meant to be chanted out loud, all the other mantras, especially the bija mantras, are internal chants.
Yeah.
And they should, ultimately the goal has to be that they become one with your breath.
Right.
So you could be going about your everyday activities, but inside the chanting continues.
Right.
It becomes one with, every breath that you take. You're saying, I'm Kleem Sau, or the Mahaganapati mantra, or the Navarna mantra, or any one of the mantras which appeals to you.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to understand this whole, the drawing of the Sri Yantra itself. It's so simplified. It is so, I would say, in terms of a designer's language or an engineer's language, right? It is so scalar. You can scale it up to anything, because as an artist also I see it. Dot is the first thing that anyone puts on a paper, right? To draw something, to make a house, you need to first put a dot, right? And then like an artist, Paul Klee says, the line is nothing but a dot gone for a walk.
Right.
So, and
Beautiful.
then you say, right? And then you say the triangle is the most simplest form.
Also the stablest.
Which you can form out of 3 lines. Right. So out of 3 lines, it's the simplest form that you can make. So that becomes the triangle.
Right.
So you have a dot and you have a triangle which is downward facing, and then you integrate these triangles into all these combinations, right? So I also believe that there are in the Sri Chakra there are 4 triangles that are going up and 5 triangles that are coming down.
Right.
And all these avarnas are the formation of that, right?
The 4 upward triangles are Shiva,
Shiva,
and the 5 downward facing are the
Shakti, right?
Yeah. So where they come together
Yeah.
is where we find the Bindu.
Bindu,
That's
right?
where the union happens.
Correct.
And also, a lot of people ask how to place the Sri Yantra. So, if you're a Sri Vidya sadhaka, if you're following any Devi path, you have to place the inward triangle facing downwards.
Yeah.
But if you're a Shiva sadhaka, just turn it around.
Turn it around. Okay.
Okay, so that inward triangle then is facing upward. So it's as simple as that.
Simple as
So
that.
the same Sri Yantra can then become a focus of meditation for a Shiva Bhakt also.
Yeah.
It's not like you need another yantra for that. This can be used because this also came from Shiva.
Yeah.
So when people think that it's only exclusively for Shakti, it's not so.
Nice. So even the significance of 3 is also there, right?
Yes.
It's all the troika which is there in Sanatana Dharma.
Correct.
Sleep state, wake state, and dream state, right?
And many of the
all
triads.
the troika, all the triads.
Yes.
That's what it represents.
Rajas, Tamas, Sattva,
Yeah.
or Vata, Pitta, Kapha. You can just go on.
On.
Yeah, like you can come to about 100 triads.
Right. Okay, so as a parting shot to this particular segment on the Sri Chakra or the Sri Yantra, what would you like to tell the audience about? What would you like to say?
This is truly sacred knowledge which has been hidden from us for very long. And I think it's about time that we started to actually utilize this as a tool to manifest whatever it is that we are seeking. Because in these 9 avarnas, every desire, every aspect of human life is covered. So if someone really wants to get on the spiritual path and still also retain their aspirations and continue to enjoy bhoga, which is perfectly valid by Sri Vidya standards, because it's through bhoga that we eventually reach moksha.
Yeah.
So I would say that begin with a simple practice of a small meditation with the Sri Yantra, and then this will kind of open the path for you into greater, bigger realms, and it'll fulfill most of your desires to a point where nothing is left.
Right.
And then that will propel you in another direction of spirituality.
Superb. I would also say to people who believe only in science that there is a professor or there is a very great scholar in Karnataka. His name is Professor S.K. Ramchandra Rao.
Yes.
Right. I didn't even dwell into his book. I just flipped through it. The way he has proved the Sri Yantra using cos theta, sin theta, all the mathematics that you can get in the world. This is the book for the people who say science is, there is no science in all these esoteric practices, is all BS and stuff like that. They should read that book, see how he has proven using all the mathematical formulas that how Sri Yantra is so scientific.
And if you look at what is happening in the world of quantum physics today, quantum mechanics, I think all of the facts that we have seen in our Vedas, in our Agamas, especially in Tantra, whatever we are talking about, is being proven there.
Yeah.
And even people like, hardcore scientists like Sam Harris and Dan Dennett and all of them, they are accepting that the Vedas are probably the most scientific documents to ever exist.
Yeah.
So the Sri Yantra is just another example of that. And I think our rishis were so prescient that so many 1,000 years later, science is now knocking on the doors of what they spoke about then.
Yeah.
There's really no dichotomy for me between science and spirituality.
Correct, yeah.
Now, spirituality is actually a real science.
Correct, yeah. That's what I mean. Like they say, many people they say that Ayurveda is a pseudoscience and all these things. They say that these are people who critique these kind of things are actually pseudoscientists. Even in our own country, people like the names that you mentioned are like hardcore scientists,
Right.
who accept it, but pseudoscientists here who probably have half the knowledge of whatever needs to be done. I think it's a high time they should sit back and notice or read about things that are here, right here.
I think we were speaking about the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's that at play. Again, even here, because there's not enough knowledge.
Yeah.
They have not studied it enough.
Correct.
And so it's like with electricity, unless you see where it's like very hard to tell someone that electricity exists until you show them the outcome.
Right.
It's like that with everything related to energy. And if there is one other word for spirituality, it's the use of energy.
Yeah. You
Right?
just have to switch it on.
That's right. And then see what comes.
Right. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next one.
Thank you.